In the history of automotive world, Cadillac has always been different and known to bring extraordinary stuff. As a luxury automaker and a trendsetter, it always delivered some first evers on the market. Cadillac was the first one to introduce a mass-produced V8 and then the first overhead valve V8, both setting new standards. Their reputation as the standard of the world had been received for a reason. We are talking about a Rolls-Royce competition that once produced V12s and V16s, which defined its true status on the market. There is no need to tell the rest of the story of what happened next in the US automobile market. This notion has held true for many decades after, during which the V8 concept had been perfected ever since. The first birth came in 1914 as a flathead V8, and the family grew quickly in a variety of displacements. A monoblock design was introduced in 1936, then the first overhead valve unit in 1949, and the second generation of the overhead valve V8 hit the market in a 1963 model year, starting at 390 6.4 liter. In 1964, a 429 was introduced, enlarging both the bore and stroke, though the local competition kept increasing power and displacement. A 440, a 460, and even 462 were unleashed from Clissold and Ford, and Cadillac was not letting it go without a proper answer. There is no replacement for displacement. However, the engine's bore spacing of 4.5625 inches had certain limits. Hence, a heavily revamped engine series came along in 1968. The new architecture was presented as easier to work on, being equipped with 10% fewer parts and 25% fewer gasket joints. It gained about 80 pounds, but right off the box featured much larger displacement than any other rival. At 4.3 by 4.06 inch cylinders, the 472 7.7 liter displacement was even larger than the Oldsmobile Tornado, a sibling sharing the same platform. The 472 was advertised as making 375 horsepower and 525 pound-feet of torque at 3000 RPM in the SAE gross rating. The new design was carefully manufactured to allow larger cylinders to be used, and soon after the 472, a bigger sibling was introduced, the largest passenger car engine for foreseeable future. The bore spacing of 5 inches and a deck height of 10 inches promised space for expansion. However, the bores remained the same. A new stroker 4.304-inch crankshaft was used, resulting in 500 cubic inches or 8.2 liter. According to SAE, it put out 400 horsepower and 550 pound-feet of torque in the gross rating, which soon came to an end. In 1971, the compression ratio was reduced from 10:1 to 8.5:1 to be able to run on a wider variety of gasoline due to the fuel shortage. This caused a drop in power output. With a rough estimate, a fully equipped 1970 500 probably had around 250 to 260 horsepower in net rating, and that was its brightest time, while the reduced compression one had only 365 horsepower or 235 horsepower in net rating. With the 1973 oil crisis, the power kept dropping to the 190 to 210 horsepower range, reaching also a lower peak RPM of 3600, down from 4400. As full-size models were nearing the 5,500 pound mark, these engines were designed to offer maximum smoothness, comfort, and torque. The 472/500 series was a pure iron, weighing 670 pounds fully equipped. The block casting weighed 200 pounds, Heads 75 pounds each, and even the intake plenum was massive at nearly 50 pounds. The stock heads and intake runners flow adequately for the low RPM character of the Caddy, but terribly for any high RPM power. These were made to last 500,000 miles, spending most of the time at 2000 RPM with all the torque ready to be used. The Cadillac 500 can make a power of 1 horsepower per cubic inch, nevertheless it requires a lot more RPM and heavy modifications to reach that. Customers could later opt for a Bendix EFI, offering a bit more grunt, but nothing to write home about. Until 1975, it was an exclusive Eldorado engine, after which it found its way into the DeVille, Calais and Fleetwood, all the Caddies except the Seville. 1976 was the last year of the 8.2 liter, and that was the end of the ridiculously large American passenger car engines as we know them. In 1979, another oil crisis struck the automotive market and crippled it for long years. The 472 and 500 were Cadillac's last hooray of that awesome era, and also one of the last true Cadillac power plants for unforeseeable future at the time. Now the 500 is here for us to remember the good old times of the 1960s and early 1970s. Having said that, nobody can imagine what would happen would Cadillac finish and introduce the overhead cam V12 design from the 1960s, meant exactly for caddies like these, like the front-wheel drive Eldorado. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Cheers!